sanctions. Was Israel surprised by the asymmetric warfare which Iran started conducting?
Yes, I think it was a kind of surprise, the level of savagery.
Why has Iran stopped the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have to defend ourselves.
Like never before, on point with Kartikeya Sharma, decoding Hormuz, Kharg and the ceasefire.
What is the future of peace in West Asia?
I hope that they got their lesson.
That are supposed to give a chance. We stay ready in case it doesn't work.
Every war has a political objective.
The voices that matter, only on News 9.
What you saw me on the field and off the field is like chalk and cheese.
No guts, no glory, no pain, no gain.
My tendency is to go for magic, not for perfection.
I never give up. I like to win.
Just me being here, it's a statement.
When chips are down, the whole team could have looked up to you, said, Dada is still there.
Every time, whether I scored 100 or a Sachin scored 100 or a Rahul scored 100, the scoreboard said India won.
Let the kids know and the families know that one of the best ways to get a good education, go to a good school and a good college anywhere in the world is if you play a sport well.
There is a quality about me, which is why perhaps people feel I'm a perfectionist, because I don't get tired easily.
In Germany, the biggest newspaper was written on the first page, "This is a finishing from Lothar Matthäus' career," and this was motivating me.
I was literally on my phone at home and they're like, oh, we have the results. We suggest that you remove your breasts. And I'm like, wait, what?
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You are watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. I'm Kartik Malhotra. The big story that we are bringing for you this morning, mixed messaging from the United States. But in one of his interviews, U.S. President Donald Trump says the war in Iran is nearly over. That's the big story we are following for you this morning. Also on the show, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri meets U.S. Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore. Both indicate the making of an energy deal between India and the United States. And even as the focus shifts back to India-US trade deal, China surpasses US to become India's largest trading partner. We tell you all about that later on the show. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, a quick look at all the headlines we're tracking for you at 9 a.m. today. U.S. President Donald Trump announces plans to permanently reopen the Strait of Hormuz after a naval blockade, saying the move benefits China and the global economy. Washington expands sanctions on Iran's oil transport infrastructure, targeting dozens of entities and vessels as Tehran maintains pressure in the conflict. The United States signals readiness for another round of peace talks with Iran, even as Tehran warns it could disrupt Red Sea trade unless the naval blockade is lifted. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says gasoline prices could ease to around $3 as Washington works with Middle Eastern partners to stabilize oil markets. U.S. stocks surged to record highs with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq erasing two-week losses linked to the U.S. Israel war with Iran. China's economic growth tops expectations in the first quarter, with GDP in the world's second largest economy expanding to 5% year-on-year despite global oil crisis. Global nuclear
more demand for our paper and other alternative materials.
앞으로 큰 기대가 되고 있습니다.
China, Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia used almost a third of the world's plastic in 2020.
With the severe delays, production has effectively stopped, and as a result, we're losing revenue.
The 20-year-old factory is now telling its clients that they may need to wait up to 8 weeks for orders, versus 2 weeks previously. Han said that even if the war ended immediately, they would likely need 1 or 2 months to recover. The situation at Yeonwoo, another company that makes packaging for cosmetics, is very different. Kim Min-sang, a senior manager at parent company Kolmar Korea, said inquiries for its paper-based line of tubes and pouches have gone up threefold. He expects demand to continue to rise.
We initially began developing paper packaging in response to eco-friendly, sustainability and ESG considerations, and client demand has been steadily increasing. With ongoing disruptions in plastic supply, we expect more demand for our paper and other alternative materials.
앞으로 큰 기대가 되고 있습니다.
China, Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia used almost a third of the world's plastic in 2022, OECD data showed. Now, war has prices soaring, and firms are on the hunt for alternatives. When peace returns, the world will find out whether that's a temporary switch or the start of lasting change.
All right, with that, we will slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, India and US engage on a potential energy deal. That's as per a meeting held between Hardeep Singh Puri and Puri-Gor. Later on the show, we'll also give you the numbers as China pips the United States to become India's largest trading partner. That's coming up after this short break.
खेलता है झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया
Others see a teenage tantrum. I see you standing your ground. I see you, my daughter, 16 and already owning your story. And I couldn't be more proud. For you, only natural diamonds.
In Tamil Nadu, the battle over language returns.
ஒரே மொழி பேசுகிறோம் ஒரே எதிர்காலத்தை நோக்கி நடக்கிறோம்
Election about identity, loyalty.
Bye bye Stalin.
Dravida model versus double engine की सरकार.
बीजेपी एनडीए की डबल इंजन सरकार बनना तय है.
The stakes are high.
From the ground, the questions that matter, the voices that shape the vote. India votes only on News 9.
What you saw me on the field and off the field is like chalk and cheese.
No guts, no glory, no pain, no gain.
My tendency is to go for magic, not for perfection.
I never give up. I like to win.
Just me being here, it's a statement.
When chips are down, the whole team could have looked up to you, said, Dada is still there.
Every time, whether I scored 100 or a Sachin scored 100 or a Rahul scored 100, the scoreboard said India won.
Let the kids know and the families know that one of the best ways to get a good education, go to a good school and a good college anywhere in the world is if you play a sport well.
There is a quality about me which is why perhaps people feel I'm a perfectionist, because I don't get tired easily.
In Germany, the biggest newspaper was written on the first page. This is a finishing from Lothar Matthäus' career, and this was motivating me.
I was literally on my phone at home, and they're like, oh, we have the results. We suggest that you remove your breast. And I'm like, wait, what?
Back. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. Time now to talk about the renewed momentum in India-US trade talks. That's right, India-US trade talks are picking up pace once again after a brief pause. An Indian delegation is set to travel to Washington from April 20th to the 22nd to hold fresh discussions with US officials on the proposed interim trade deal. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal confirmed the visit. He said, and I quote, "We are looking at finalizing the legal agreement, which is a logical follow-up of the joint statement released on February 7th. There is a need for further discussions and follow-up engagement to take this forward," unquote. Now, the agreement initially expected to be signed in March has been delayed after changes in the U.S. tariff regime under U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, earlier, the two sides had agreed on a framework in February this year with tariffs on Indian goods to be reduced to 18%. But that landscape shifted after a U.S. court struck down broader reciprocal tariffs. This prompted Washington to impose a uniform 10% tariff on imports for 150 days. Now, the upcoming talks are now crucial, not just to finalize the deal, but also to address ongoing U.S. trade investigations under Section 301. For now, both sides are back at the table, but clarity on tariffs remains the key sticking point. Meanwhile, India and the United States are also stepping up their energy engagement amid looming oil crisis due to the ongoing war in West Asia. Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas Hardeep Singh Puri met U.S. Ambassador Puri-Gor to discuss ways to deepen cooperation in the energy sector. The talks focused on strengthening energy security, expanding access to reliable supplies, and exploring new opportunities for growth. Both sides described the meeting as productive, underlining the growing importance of the India-US energy partnership. The meeting also comes at a time of global uncertainty, with India reiterating that it will continue sourcing oil from a diverse set of suppliers to safeguard its energy interests. And from trade with the US to trade with the United Kingdom, India's trade push is gathering pace with multiple free trade agreements moving closer to roll out. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal says the India-UK FTA signed last year is likely to come into force as early as May this year. Now, under the deal, 99% of Indian exports will get zero duty access to the UK, while tariffs on British goods like cars and whiskey will be reduced in India. The government is also expecting the India-Oman FTA to kick in by June 1st, offering duty-free access to nearly 98% of Indian exports. Meanwhile, a trade deal with New Zealand is likely to be signed on April 27th, aimed at boosting bilateral trade and attracting investment. And the big one, the India-EU FTA, is also being targeted for completion within this calendar year. And at a time when India's exports have dropped almost 7.5% to a little over $38.9 billion in the month of March, the steepest fall in the past 5 months, imports have declined about 6.5% to a little under $60 billion from the year before. But India's trade with China has reached $151.1 billion in the year 2025-26, making it India's largest trading partner ahead of the US. Remember, prior to this, the US was India's largest trading partner for 4 consecutive years until the financial year 2024-25. Now, while India's trade deficit shrank to $20.67 billion from a little over $21.7 billion last year, the trade deficit with China has widened significantly. The country's trade deficit with Beijing, however, widened to an all-time high of $112.16 billion in the last financial year, up almost from $99.2 billion the year before. India's exports to China, meanwhile, rose 36.6% to almost $20 billion for the last fiscal year, while imports increased 16% to a little over $131.5 billion. Now, despite challenges, India achieved record exports of $860 billion in FY26, showcasing resilience. Several free trade agreements are expected to boost future trade prospects. India's outbound shipments to the United States grew marginally by just 0.9% to about $87 billion during financial year 26. Imports from the US have increased almost 16% to a little under $53 billion. Now, trade surplus with the United States has declined to about $34.5 billion in FY26 from a little under $41 billion in the previous year. China was India's top trading partner from 2013-2014 up until 2017-2018, but also in between in the COVID period of 2020-2021. Before China, the UAE was India's largest trading partner. The US has been the largest trading partner from the year 2021-22. And shifting focus now to the stock markets, Wall Street was back in record territory on Wednesday, driven by a mix of optimism and strong earnings. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite both closed at fresh all-time highs on Wednesday as investors bet on progress in the U.S.-Iran talks. Now, what's notable here is that U.S. markets have now fully recovered losses triggered at the start of the Iran conflict, with the S&P 500 even crossing the 7,000 mark. Take a look.
U.S. stocks ended mostly higher on Wednesday. The Dow was the outlier, dipping marginally, while the S&P 500 gained 0.8% to close at a record high, and the Nasdaq climbed about 1.6% to also notch a record high close. The Nasdaq's record finish came just 13 days after confirming it was in a correction due to worries about the Middle East war. Equities have found strong support this week from investor hopes that Washington and Tehran could return to the negotiating table with a view to ending the war, which has caused widespread disruption in global oil markets, reignited inflation concerns, and muddied the interest rate outlook. Those remain an ongoing concern, notes Shana Orsic-Sizzle, founder and CEO of Bonrian Capital Management.
Oil prices and food prices are not included in the inflation numbers that the Federal Reserve pay attention to. So while they are the largest pressures on the individual consumer, they don't necessarily show up in the numbers that the monetary policy decisions are made for. And that is problematic, and it puts the Fed in a difficult position.
Among Wednesday's stock moves, Bank of America rose nearly 2% after the second biggest U.S. lender reported growth in first quarter profit. And fellow Wall Street heavyweight Morgan Stanley rallied 4.5% after it reported a jump in quarterly profit. Elsewhere in the market, Broadcom advanced more than 4% after Meta extended its custom chips deal with the firm. And shares of Allbirds soared more than 582% after the footwear maker said it was raising capital and pivoting towards AI computing infrastructure.
All right, and the knock-on effect not just of Wall Street but also of the resumption of potential peace in West Asia is reflecting beautifully on the Asian markets as well. In fact, this morning, once again, Japan and South Korea responding really favorably to emerging news. The Nikkei 225, Japan's benchmark index, is up almost 2.4% at levels just below 59,600. Meanwhile, South Korea's Kospi is also up more than 2% at levels of about 6,219. Taiwan's TAIEX, Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's Shanghai Composite all in the green territory this morning. Similar sentiment also visible across the Indian stock market, with the Sensex and the Nifty both opening in the green this morning. Sensex is up almost 540 odd points after closing yesterday. Trade session also up about 1,200 points this morning, trading at about 78,650. Remember, today is also the Sensex expiry. Nifty 50, meanwhile, is up about 160 points this morning to levels of a little under 24,400. Volatility in the Indian stock market is ebbing. We are seeing a 4% decline this morning at levels comfortably below 18. Meanwhile, the small cap index is outperforming the benchmark Sensex and Nifty, up by more than a percentage point. Meanwhile, the Nifty 50 heat map is giving us some sort of mixed cues as far as trading goes. The tech sector, heavily dependent, of course, on the mood on Wall Street, is in positive shades of green this morning. Meanwhile, some mixed reactions coming from the energy side as well as consumer durables stock Titan is in the red this morning. On the health side, Sun Pharma is down about 0.5 percentage point or so. We've got Kranti Batini, equity strategist, Wealth Mill Security, joining us this morning for his expert opinion. Kranti, good morning. Pleasure having you back here with us on News 9. What's the mood of the market? It is looking healthy. A second consecutive day of gains recorded, at least as far as the first 10 minutes or so of trading go.
Good morning to you. We are witnessing a complete recovery, a broad-based recovery in the market thanks to the de-escalations in the Middle East. But there are still some kind of doubts, but still the markets are rallying at this point of time. Nobody is effort to extend the war further and also escalate further. That's what the mood of the market at this point of time. We are seeing a complete cool-off in the crude oil prices. That's where the Asian markets are taking the positivity, and in line with the Asian markets, Indian markets are rallying at this point of time. We are back at the positive zone. If we could move the Nifty further to 24,500, we can see markets are decisively in a positive zone in the medium to short term. That's where the market is taking the cues. But the crude oil price downtrend and crude oil price softening is a big relief to the Indian markets, and that's what the optimism we are witnessing on Indian stock markets this morning.
Absolutely. Well, you say softening of crude oil prices, but remember, Kranti, they're still about 50% higher than what they were at the start of the year. In fact, oil was trading on the 2nd of Jan at levels of about $60 per barrel, and last closing on the Brent suggests about $94, $95 or so. So while prices have softened, I agree with you, they're still much higher than what India had become accustomed to.
Absolutely, Karthik. You're absolutely correct. If we compare the 3 months averages and all, absolutely the oil prices in the recent past, they touch it to the range of 119.50 per barrel. And in fact, the forecast, if these escalations are going to continue, and there is a forecast of oil touching to $50 per barrel, which is going to be a disastrous situation for Indian economy is concerned. Our current account deficit is going to ballooning, and also the inflation is going to be a key concern for Indian market. But markets are taking this relief because the crude oil prices are in a downtrend. If the war is going to de-escalate in the next coming weeks further, and if the peace talks concludes in a positive way, the crude oil is expected to be coming back to the range of around $65 to $70 per barrel. That's where India is going to take the advantage. And the markets are always forward-looking animals. They're trying to discount the coming downtrend in the crude oil prices in the medium to short term.
Absolutely. I'm sure anybody listening to you would be hoping that that price of $65 a barrel comes really soon. Meanwhile, oil marketing companies are reporting losses of as high as about 18 rupees a litre on petrol and 35 rupees per litre on diesel. Now, with the election season already on and counting expected to end on the 29th of April, are you foreseeing some sort of sudden spike in retail prices of petrol and diesel?
Yeah, Karthik. Post-election, we can see some kind of a tinkering. I'm not sure how much the ferocity, how much the increase can be, but definitely there can be some kind of a tinkering towards the increase of the petrol and diesel prices in the retail market. That cannot be avoidable for the government, given the kind of last 1 month the spike in the crude oil prices are concerned.
Let's now move on to IT stocks, and of course, this is some of the stocks like Wipro are likely to announce their quarterly earnings today. TCS already announced its Q4 results last week, and we are seeing some sort of a sentimental sort of uptick in IT stocks. Part of it, I assume, is linked to what we saw on Wall Street, but beyond that, we are looking at Wipro also in the green territory this morning. Now, does this indicate that the market is a little bullish on AI not having been as much of a disruptor in the last financial year as it was made out to be?
Yeah, Karthik, last few days due to the war, the AI discussions came down at the discussion tables. Everything is hijacked by the geopolitics in the markets. But given the kind of the strong foothold the Indian IT companies have and the roller coaster ride these stocks are witnessed in the last 1 year, the stocks are nearing to the long-term averages. So as a contrarian buy, some kind of a bottom fishing we are witnessing in IT packs are concerned at this point of time. But the crux is how these companies are adaptable. And we witnessed the announcement of the TCS, how they are developing their AI teams are concerned going ahead. So by and large, how these companies are positioned to change their business models, change their upskilling their employees towards the AI. That is the crux. But given the kind of the current structure of the market is concerned, we are witnessing some kind of a bottom fishing in IT stocks. At this point of time, we're witnessing a broad-based rally in the market. So that's how this broad-based rally is giving optimism and some kind of a positivity towards the IT sector also.
Right. And the last time we spoke, Kranti, you were saying one of the relatively more insulated sectors would be the health services sector. And today is a good day potentially to look at that space because we are seeing some sort of a dip in Apollo Hospitals and also Fortis. Would this be a good correction to buy into these relatively unimpacted stocks with all that is happening in the world of energy markets and, of course, the conflict in West Asia?
Yeah, we are witnessing some kind of a profit booking in the sector today, Karthik. But given the kind of the long-term opportunity for these companies are concerned, one can add on dips. The healthcare chains are concerned who have a pan-India presence. Still, these stocks can give decent returns in these kind of volatile markets.
All right, Kranti Bathini, let's leave it at that for this morning. As always, pleasure having you here with us on Newsline, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And moving on now, Air India has posted annual losses of about 22,000 crore rupees for the financial year 2026. Now, this humongous loss has compelled the company to seek financial aid from its shareholders, as per a report by Bloomberg. Now, the year has been particularly difficult for Air India. It was a period punctuated by the deadly crash of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner in Ahmedabad. Now, this, of course, was followed by the closure of Pakistani airspace to Indian carriers and, of course, the recent West Asia conflict. The loss recorded by Air India is larger in dollar terms than $1.6 billion. And this is the internal company loss estimated, like we told you, by Bloomberg. Now, Air India's controlling shareholder Tata Group, as well as Singapore Airlines, which owns about 25% in the carrier, they're both seemingly in talks to inject the much-needed cash. Now, the record loss comes at a critical juncture for Air India. The company's CEO, Campbell Wilson, just last week announced his intention to step down later this year. And if that was not enough, the airline was ranked worst for safety issues in the aviation regulator's last annual audit. And despite ambitious fleet expansion plans, the airline has struggled to lift yield and improve service to desired levels. Now, the board of Tata Sons has seemingly also set the condition of stemming Air India's losses as one of the key conditions for approving a third term for Tata Group chairman N. Chandrasekaran. The airline had started the fiscal year on a positive note, posting operating profits in the first few weeks of April 2025. Now, that turned after Pakistan closed its airspace to Indian Airlines following Operation Sindoor, forcing them to take longer routes to US and Europe. And then, of course, came the deadly crash in June of a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which killed more than 240 people. It sent the carrier reeling, prompting it to reduce international and domestic services. And moving on now, crude oil prices that have risen sharply with the West Asia conflict are not expected to return to the pre-war levels of $65 a barrel in the near term. And this according to a report by brokerage firm Prabhudas Lilladher. Now, the report noted that the increase in prices is likely to persist, keeping India's import bill elevated for coming months. Now, remember, India buys around 4.3 million barrels of crude every single day. Now, that added up to about $180 billion a year as India's oil bill. With prices now much higher, Prabhudas Lilladher estimates India's oil import bill could jump by more than $70 billion a year. About 20% of the world's crude oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Further escalation of hostilities and any impact on the Bab al-Mandeb can further squeeze oil supplies and push prices up, according to the brokerage. Now remember, oil prices have increased sharply from a little over $60 a barrel at the start of the year to about $72 a barrel before U.S. attacked Iran on February 28th. During the month that followed, Brent skyrocketed to as high as $120 a barrel before climbing down slightly to levels under $100 now. But even at a stable $90 a barrel, that's 50% higher than what prices looked at the start of this calendar year. The brokerage noted that the war hasn't just hit tankers and routes. Several global natural gas and oil refineries have been destroyed. Now, these aren't easy to fix. Even if tensions between US and Iran de-escalate, freight charges, insurance costs and tanker availability have all spiked and likely to remain at these levels for long. And with that, we will slip into another short break. A lot more coming up on the other side. Keep watching News 9.
Down Cool Street. When you're hot, we'll cool you down on Cool Street. On Cool Street. On Cool Street. Ooh, I'm cool. Chill your deal. I'm cool. Chill your deal.
I'm cool. Chill your deal.
Ahead of 2026 West Bengal Assembly election, polarization in West Bengal sharpens.
टीएमसी सरकार के जाने का काउंटडाउन शुरू हो चुका है।
हम डिटेक्ट, डिलीट और डिपोर्ट ये पॉलिसी के तहत एक घुसपैठियों को बंगाल के बाहर निकालने का काम करेंगे।
There are three prime issues: citizenship, border, identity. Is it the Nirmam Sarkar versus May J. Babu?
যতই করো হামলা জিতবে কিন্তু বাংলা।
Who will retain the throne in West Bengal? Can West Bengal look beyond the muddy water of violent politics?
From the ground, the questions that matter, the voices that shape the vote. India votes only on News 9.
Let's move on now to other stories we are following for you from around the world. Let's start with the US. US has paused its direct military support to Ukraine. Vice President J.D. Vance said on Wednesday that Washington is no longer buying and sending weapons to Kyiv, calling the move a very good thing. Now, speaking at an event in Georgia, Vance said that the US has asked European allies to step in and purchase weapons for Ukraine themselves. Now, the move marks a significant change in how support for Ukraine could be structured going forward.
I was campaigning for the Senate. There are a lot of Ukrainian Americans in Cleveland, Ohio. And this person got really agitated at me because I was saying we should stop funding the Ukraine war. Okay? And I still believe that, obviously. And it's one of the things I'm proudest that we've done as administration is we've told Europe that if you want to buy weapons, you can, but the United States is not buying weapons and sending them to Ukraine anymore. We're just out of that business. It's a very good thing.
Now, tensions between the White House and the Federal Reserve are intensifying. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he is confident that President Donald Trump's nominee, Kevin Warsh, will take over as Fed chair in time. But the transition seems far from smooth. President Donald Trump has now threatened to remove current chair Jerome Powell from his remaining role on the Fed's board if he does not step aside after his term as chief ends in mid-May. The move has escalated a rare standoff, raising concerns about the independence of the central bank and the stability of its leadership transition.
The president has publicly said that you are the reason that he has not fired Chairman Jay Powell. Will you make that case again to him, as he's recently said that he still wants to fire the chairman?
Look, I am confident that the process that we have laid out in terms of Kevin Warsh
becoming the next Fed chair. He's going to have the hearing on the 21st of this month. He's a great candidate. We know that the Republicans on the Senate Banking Committee are aligned in that, and I am very optimistic that Kevin Warsh will be the chair of the Fed on time, and that will be a moot question.
And on to Russia now. The economy is under pressure and President Vladimir Putin is taking note. Putin has rebuked top officials after the economy contracted by 1.8% in the first 2 months of this calendar year and asked for fresh measures to boost growth. The slowdown comes after growth slipped to around 1% in 2025, down sharply from nearly 5% the year before, hit by tight monetary policy and Western sanctions on oil revenues.
Statistics show that economic performance has unfortunately been declining for 2 months in a row. Overall, GDP decreased by 1.8% in January and February. Manufacturing and industrial production in general, as well as the systemically important construction sector, suffered losses.
Значимое направление как строительство. Рассчитываю сегодня услышать подробные доклады.
Today I expect to hear detailed reports on the current economic situation
Макропоказатели
and why the trajectory of macroeconomic indicators is currently below not only the expectations of experts and analysts,
но и прогнозов.
but also the forecasts made by the government itself and the Central Bank of Russia. And of course, as it has already been said, I look forward to your proposals for additional measures aimed at reviving the growth of the domestic economy.
North Korea's nuclear program is expanding and the warning is coming from the global watchdog. IAEA chief Rafael Grossi has said Pyongyang has made very serious nuclear advances, including a possible new uranium enrichment facility. Now, there are also signs of increased activity at a key complex, raising concerns about its growing weapons capability.
We have been able to confirm that there is a rapid increase in the operation of the Yongbyon 5 megawatt reactor. All of them point to a very serious increase in the capabilities of the DPRK in the area of nuclear weapons production, which is estimated at a few dozen warheads.
All right, and in corporate news now, Meta is doubling down on artificial intelligence with a major expansion of its chip partnership. The company will work with Broadcom to develop multiple generations of custom AI processors as it ramps up computing capacity across its platforms. Now, the deal runs through 2029 and includes a commitment of over 1 gigawatt of compute power. That is roughly enough to power 7.5 lakh US homes.
It's your basic.
Meta is expanding its deal with chip designer Broadcom to build several generations of custom processors to power AI features across its apps. The deal announced Tuesday extends their partnership through 2029. It includes an initial commitment of more than 1 gigawatt of computing capacity, enough to power roughly 750,000 US homes. The agreement also brings a boardroom change. Broadcom CEO Hock Tan will step down from Meta's board and take on an advisory role focused on custom chip strategy, according to a joint statement. Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg said the deal helps build the computing backbone needed to supply, quote, personal superintelligence to billions of people. As AI drives soaring demand for computing, tech giants such as Meta, Google, and Amazon are designing their own silicon to reduce reliance on NVIDIA's expensive processors. That shift has been a major boost for Broadcom, which develops custom chips and supplies infrastructure software. Its shares were up 3.5% in extended trading, while those of Meta were little changed.
Now, staying with the theme of artificial intelligence, well, the AI-driven chip boom is clearly showing up in earnings. ASML has posted stronger than expected results for the first quarter and raised its revenue outlook for 2026. The company says demand for advanced chip-making tools is surging as tech firms scale up AI infrastructure.
ASML reported stronger than expected first quarter earnings on Wednesday.
It hit $3.2 billion on sales of $10.3 billion, up from the same period a year ago. The world's largest supplier of chip-making tools also raised its revenue outlook for the year. It comes as the AI boom lifted demand for the firm's equipment. ASML is the only provider of the EUV lithography tools needed to print cutting-edge AI chips for firms like Nvidia. The stronger forecast strengthens that position, although the firm pointed to potential bottlenecks as demand for computing capacity in data centres soars. CEO Christophe Fouquet said demand for chips is outpacing supply. He added ASML saw a host of new orders in the past quarter due to this trend. The firm said revenue for the year will now be between $42 billion and $47 billion. That's up from its last forecast of $40 billion to close to $46 billion. ASML shares have risen 40% so far this year with the quick construction of data centres and a shortage of memory chips. Although some analysts see its valuation as already high, but its shares were slightly up on Wednesday.
And the AI boom continues to reshape technology like never before, from record earnings for chip makers to rising concerns flagged by Anthropic over cybersecurity. The industry is seeing both explosive growth as well as new risks emerging. Here's a quick roundup of the biggest developments in the world of artificial intelligence this week.
From billions in earnings for chip makers to Anthropic's cybersecurity concerns, this is AI Weekly. Meta is expanding its deal with chip designer Broadcom to build several generations of custom processors to power AI features across its apps. The deal announced Tuesday extends their partnership through 2029. It includes an initial commitment of more than 1 gigawatt of computing capacity, enough to power roughly 750,000 US homes. The world's largest supplier of chip-making tools, ASML, reported stronger than expected first-quarter earnings on Wednesday. It hit around $3.2 billion, up from the same period a year ago. The Dutch company also raised its revenue outlook for the year. Fellow chip maker TSMC saw a 35% surge in first-quarter revenue. The world's largest contract chip maker said January to March income hit just over $35.7 billion. The number beat market forecasts and came from huge demand for AI applications. Analysts raised their forecasts for April to June revenue despite concerns over possible supply disruption caused by the Middle East conflict. China's chip industry is also showing strong growth momentum as a global sprint to build AI infrastructure creates a demand explosion. Semiconductor industry executives said higher capital spending and capacity expansion has chip makers racing to keep up. China's manufacturing capacity for chips used in cars, smartphones and electronics is projected to reach 42% of global output by 2028, according to one industry executive. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell held an urgent meeting with major bank CEOs, warning of cybersecurity risks linked to Anthropic's latest AI model. That's according to two sources familiar with the matter. Anthropic launched its powerful new Mythos model but stopped short of a broad release, citing concerns it could expose previously unknown cybersecurity vulnerabilities.
And as we draw to a close, beyond the historic Artemis II moon mission itself, it's the visuals from NASA's recent milestone that are grabbing attentions. The NASA experts say the Artemis II crew delivered striking images during their lunar flyby after months of specialized training. Now, photography trainers say the results exceed expectations. We leave you with those breathtaking visuals.
When they first become an astronaut or an astronaut candidate, we give them about 4 to 6 hours of camera training to kind of bring them to a basic level. And then depending on what they do for the next few years before they get assigned, they may have some classes. They can check out cameras and take them home. But once they get assigned, we have about 10 classes that we give them, so about 20 hours-ish. You know, you go into these missions and you don't really know exactly what you're going to see. And we train the crew up to a certain level, and we train them to be able to solve problems. But really what they did was really exceeded my expectations by quite a bit.
They wanted something that would be in their hand that they could use and they could take out. There's another nice one that is nice, that it fits in your pocket, that it fits nearby and you can take out and use when it's there. A couple of the downsides, it makes really big files. So one thing we do have to think about on board is what does it take to get files down? And unfortunately, we don't have bandwidth, and that's something a lot of people down here are really used to instantly having everything. And the idea that we had to wait to get pictures back and we had to wait to get things back because we don't have the bandwidth is surprising to people.
The LPG shortage is now being felt across several cities in India. Our reporters travel across the country to bring you the ground reality.
It's impacting your and my kitchen.
Gas crisis hits kitchen fires. Restaurants and small businesses shutting down.
Very difficult because everything runs on LPG.
Supply shortage, hoarding or panic buying.